Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering, they're cheering, and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell, give 'em a hand, and let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Mets Talk Live right here on the channel. Hopefully everybody is enjoying their Monday, the start of the work week, and thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live. Hopefully everybody is having a little bit of a breather when it comes to this New York Mets team coming out of the second half, as they struggled against the Marlins coming out after the All-Star break, and we'll get all into that. We'll get into the Christian Scott struggles. We'll get into the continued struggles of Pete Alonso. We'll get into the runners in scoring position concerns in this Marlins series. The next opponent is the New York Yankees, and of course the trade deadline that is coming very, very quickly for the New York Mets. 9 days away. Not a little bit over a week away before the trade deadline, guys, and we are ready to start talking about who could the Mets get and the possible teams that we could be looking at when it comes to bullpen arms. And are the Mets going to be big buyers? Are they going to be willing to give up top-level prospects to get elite arms in this bullpen, or are they going to go the mid-level relievers at the trade deadline? That's something that we're going to talk about as well. So for the next hour, we got a ton of talked about, and make sure you hit on that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're a new subscriber of the channel, welcome to the channel. Welcome to Mets Talk Live. All right, guys. So the Mets are 50-48. They did lose yesterday 4-2 to the Miami Marlins, as Christian Scott struggled once again and only going 4 innings with 7 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, and the home run that really put a damper on the game, or at least in Christian Scott's start, and it was only 4 innings. And that is the issue that we're going to run into with Christian Scott. So before we get into the more in-depth Christian Scott overall and why I still believe this is going to be a problem going forward for the New York Mets, and they're in a tough spot. I understand the tough spot, but you got to choose. And we'll get to why they got to choose in just a second. So the Mets did lose 4-2 yesterday against the Marlins. Christian Scott didn't have a good outing. Once again, still looking for his first win of the 2024 season and has over a 4.5 ERA, which isn't good as well. So what do I mean about choice for the New York Mets? Well, the Mets got to make a choice sooner or later. Christian Scott was rushed up to the major leagues because of necessity, right? It wasn't because he was just doing so well in AAA that they had no choice but to bring him up. They had the choice of leaving him down, letting him develop his secondary pitches, which are still a problem. If you haven't paid attention to Christian Scott since he came up, his secondary pitches are subpar, right? They do have a lot of good movement, but he flattens out a lot of his pitches, a lot of his secondary pitches, way too much at the major league level. Now, minor leaguers might miss those pitches. The major leaguers hit that ball over the wall, and that has been the problem with Christian Scott. He's been giving up those big home runs, those 2-3 run home runs that have either brought back teams into games or have given teams a couple of run lead. And that has been the issue with Christian Scott. So what is the problem when it comes to Christian Scott, and why, where some people say, oh yeah, we can trade Quintana, we can trade Minaya or one of these veteran guys and get rid of them and leave Christian Scott in there? You can't do that. You cannot do that. Because you see what the problem is with Christian Scott. Unless Christian Scott is pitching excellent in those 4 to 5 innings he's going to pitch, he ain't pitching more than that, then why keep him in the rotation? Why risk trading one of your veteran starters for bullpen help where you know at the very least if Quintana or Minaya or Severino is the one who was traded, one of those guys for bullpen help, you know those guys, those veterans, even when they don't have it that day, they can at least spell your bullpen and pitch a little deeper into the ball game, and you know they can get to 95 to 100 pitches and give you a little bit of a breather for your bullpen instead of going, if they have a tough outing and they're giving up a decent amount of runs and it's only the 4th inning, you know you can get them, you can at least get those guys to the 5th or 6th inning because their pitch count might not be as high. With Christian Scott, if he struggles, you're taking him out early because you don't want to put more pressure on him with the run totals that he's already given up, with the lack of innings that he's going to pitch, and you have a pitch limit on him every single game. So you need him to pitch extremely well to keep him in the ball game to go 5 innings. Maybe 6 on occasion. Maybe. That is the issue that you're running into. And I know I have disagreements with my guy Chris and a couple of other Mets fans that want to see Christian Scott up here and want him in this rotation. But you fall into a situation that you saw yesterday where if he was a veteran, yeah, he gave up 3 runs. He gave up that 3-run homer to Jazz Chisholm, gave up 7 hits, couple of strikeouts, couple of walks. But you have no margin for error. If he doesn't pitch well, his pitch count is going to be up by the time the 5th inning comes, and you got to take him out anyway. So what are you really gaining besides experience for Christian Scott overall as a team in 2024? I can care less about 2025. That does not matter to me. Now, I know it matters to the Mets. They have to worry about that. But Christian Scott was brought up here in this rotation because of injuries, because of lack of performance from a guy like Tyler McGill, because of the Kodai Senga injury. That's why he is here. But if you're going to limit his pitch count and limit his innings, he is not benefit in this 2024 team enough to tell me that he needs to be in this rotation. And God forbid they use a starting pitching veteran in the three guys I just mentioned earlier to acquire bullpen help. Because now you're really relying on Christian Scott to be in this rotation, and you're hoping that health with Kodai Senga is going to happen. You're leaving a lot of ifs, and you're losing depth in your rotations, because if there is an injury, your lack of depth now isn't as good or as long as the list you would have to choose from if somebody gets hurt. That is the issue that we continue to run into. So let's not make a mistake about Christian Scott, that he was so good in AAA that he deserved to be in this rotation, because he was so good, you just couldn't leave him down anymore. Like Jeff McNeil, like Pete Alonso, like Mark Vientos. Guys like that are just destroying the baseball, or just playing so well that you have no choice but to bring them up at the majors because they have nothing else left to prove. Christian Scott, secondary pitches aren't major league caliber yet. He has too many flat secondary pitches. He doesn't throw enough secondary pitches for strikes. And the only thing he really has is that fastball that is very good. But when you can lay off that fastball and wait on that secondary pitch, the other way around, when you can, lay off those secondary pitches and wait for his fastball, guess what? You're going to get hit. And he's gotten hit in the major leagues. And it's not about he gives us a tremendous amount of hits, right? Yesterday he did, but he hasn't given up a tremendous amount of hits, right? I know Chris talked about in the group chat earlier today about his whip. His whip is very good. But it's the moments where he starts to get in trouble a little bit, where he starts to flatten out on those secondary pitches, where he gives up that big home run. If he doesn't give up those big home runs, and it seems like it's a trend every game with him, that he gives up the big home run, he would be better. But he's not there yet. And we're counting on him to be better than what he currently is, or expected him to be better than what he's probably capable of at this moment in his career. So the Mets are trying to win a ball game with a guy who has a pitch limit, who has an innings limit, and who doesn't have full control over his secondary pitches as of yet. That's why you can't trade a veteran starting pitcher for bullpen help, because you're leaving yourself very vulnerable in the rotation. Yeah, your bullpen might be good, but the bullpen might be coming in earlier because you're trusting Christian Scott every fifth or sixth day now going forward, because now you just traded one of your veteran starters for bullpen help. So you're hurting one side of your team to benefit another. That does not make sense to me. So in my opinion, Christian Scott, in his 6-man rotation that's going to happen once Kodai Senga comes back, is got to be better, right? You can't try to win ball games and try to protect an arm at the same time. It does not work, especially when you're counting on him as much as you might have to, because you can't set up your bullpen every single game for Christian Scott. You can't have him pitch every fifth or sixth day and say, well, I can't use this guy today or that guy today, because you know Christian Scott's not going more than 5 innings. So you need a long man that's available that you might not use in previous games, because you need that long man, if it's Jose Buto or is it Adrian Hauser, to go multiple innings in a Christian Scott start. So you're limiting your bullpen in the games prior to Christian Scott starts, because you know Christian Scott's not going to go deep into a game. You're going to need your long man in Adrian Hauser or Jose Buto to go 2 or 3 innings. There's the problem there. So not only do you have to plan for a Christian Scott start, you're setting yourself up for the previous games where you have no use of using certain pitchers because you need them for the Christian Scott starts. It's a dangerous game to play. It's a very dangerous game to play, and you have to make sure that that pitcher is available in Christian Scott starts. So you're setting yourself up in previous games and putting yourself in situations where you can't afford to lose another long man because you know that long man needs to be available for Christian Scott. Or you're going to see the Danny Youngs of the world or the Diekmans or the Ottavinos in a Christian Scott start after the 5th inning. So you got 4 more innings of the C-level pitchers in a Christian Scott start. Not only is he not putting up zeros, he's leaving games that are either the team is losing or they're not winning at that moment, and the game's close. So you're going to count on Diekman, Ottavino, and God knows who else in his start? No. That's why you're going to keep around an Adrian Hauser and not use him in previous games, or maybe even a Jose Butto in previous games. That's what we're falling into right now. That's why the Christian Scott experiment is a failed experiment right now. And his development is probably getting pushed back because he is up with the major league team. You can't work with those secondary pitches as much as you can in the minors. You can control his innings and pitch count more safely because you don't care about wins and losses in AAA. You're protecting this guy. You're not really protecting him enough at the major league level, because if he is pitching well, say if he was putting up zeros in the first 4 innings, but his pitch count is high, you're not keeping him in the ball game, so you're not really helping your team more because you're going to use a lot more of your bullpen. It's a controllable, protected plan when you have him in AAA. Right? I understand why the Mets are going to a 6-man rotation, but they're setting themselves up for the rest of the season with Christian Scott pitching a set number of innings per game and a pitch count per game. That is the problem. It's a huge issue. There's too many people that are willing to trade a Quintana. And easy, I was just going to bring that up. A Sean Manaea, or even a possible Severino trade for maybe a bigger arm in the bullpen. It's too risky to trade those guys because that means you're trusting more of Christian Scott, possibly a Jose Butto that might go into the rotation. So you're going to have Jose Butto, who's probably not on a pitch count and an innings limit, but we're expecting these guys to, like a guy like Jose Butto, who probably isn't on a tremendous pitch count, but is probably on somewhat of an innings limit. These guys have not pitched enough innings that you're asking for on top of a wild card spot run or a playoff run. Like, that's a lot to ask for and trying to protect them at the same time, right? Mark my words, if David Stearns wants to half-ass the deadline and trade one of the veteran starting pitchers to get bullpen help, it's going to backfire and it's going to bite us in the ass because the pitching in the rotation is going to slack off a little bit because you're losing a veteran who you trust, who you know if he doesn't have his stuff, you don't have to rush to take him out because you're worrying about a pitch count or an innings limit. You can keep him in the ball game to protect your bullpen at least for another inning, maybe even 2. You're not doing that with Christian Scott. You're probably not going to do that with Jose Butto if you have to throw him back in the rotation. So not only you're going to get rid of Butto out of the bullpen, who's been good, who's been really good, throw him back in the rotation where he's solid, but you're also having innings limit on him. Not a hard innings limit, but you're still protecting him. So now you got two guys in your rotation you got to protect and still win. And you lose one of your veterans that you know can throw 95 to 100 pitches that on a good day can definitely go 7 innings. You're not doing that with Christian Scott. You might do that with Jose Butto. That is the issue you're going to fall into for the Mets fans and not just content creators, right? They deserve an opinion, right? That's why they do their channels. It's not a bad concept about Christian Scott, about trading a veteran. I understand what they're thinking, but they're not thinking enough about the overall problems the New York Mets are going to have in their rotation going forward. Because you also got Kodai Senga coming back in this rotation, who is going to have a pitch count and innings limit, or at least an innings limit early on. So probably for the first month he's back, from mid-July or the end, from the 20 on Friday, whatever date that is. What is that? The 26th, 25th, whatever the hell it is. Until the end of August, that first month he's back, you're protecting his innings. And you might even do it into September. So you trade a veteran starter. You get a bullpen arm. You get a couple of bullpen arms, whatever it might be. You get a bullpen that's actually good now. That's more trusted arms. Say if they do trade Quintana. Now you got Minaya, Severino, Christian Scott, Kodai Senga, and David Peterson. Right? Wonderful. Right? And you're probably going to have to bring Jose Butto back in the rotation to make a 6-man. So you trade those guys. You trade a veteran. So now you got Jose Butto, who is on a soft innings limit. You got Christian Scott, who's on a hard innings limit and a pitch count. So if his pitch count is high and he's in the 3rd inning, or like yesterday, the 4th inning, you're taking him out. You're going to kill your bullpen. And that's if you didn't kill your bullpen in the previous games. And you got Kodai Senga, who's going to be on a pitch count at least for the first start or two, and he's definitely going to have an innings limit. So now you're worrying about 3 guys in your rotation out of your 6, where right now you're worrying about 1 guy, Christian Scott. And then when Senga comes back, you're worrying about 2 guys when it comes to pitch count and innings limit out of your 6-man rotation. That's why you cannot trade a veteran starter, regardless of if it sounds good. It's not worth the risk if you're trying to make a run for a wild card spot and trying to make the playoffs. It's not going to work. There's too many conditions. There's too many rules and ways to set up yourself into disaster, because that good bullpen is going to get overused too many times every week. It can't be a successful motto. It can't be a successful plan. It's not going to work. When Kodai Senga comes back in this rotation and you got to worry about 2 of your pitchers in your rotation out of the 6 when it comes to pitch count and innings limit, is a lot better to deal with than having 3 guys out of your 6 to deal with on a weekly basis with pitch count and innings limit. That's a problem. Yeah, easy. I agree. 10-7 is not good enough. Look, it's okay because you are a couple of games over 500 and it's keeping you on that same level, right? They got to be better, right? You can't look, you got to salvage the series today. It'll be a disaster. Like you might by the end of the day, if you lose today, you might be out of a wild card spot. Again, you can get back the next day, but you might be out of a wild card spot. Your goal is to keep that wild card spot and continue that. That's the goal. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the Mets today. And we'll get to the runners in scorer position in this series and then start in the second half. So that's enough about Christian Scott. Let's go back to the next topic. We spent about 20 minutes on this Christian Scott thing because I think it's really important to realize that it's a problem. It's not benefiting this team, and it's not benefiting Christian Scott. Besides experience, his development has been halted because it was a necessity to bring him up. And now he's probably going to have to stay in the rotation because of the 6-man rotation idea that they're going to have, which was their plan, but it's not beneficial overall to Christian Scott's development, in my opinion. All right, so let's get to the next problem. Pete Alonso. Continued struggles. I'm going to pull up his situational stats in 2024. Chris really did an excellent job breaking it down in this video yesterday. If you haven't checked it out, he really goes into depth. Talks about Nimmo and Lindor because you got to compare your best players on your team to other best players on your team, right? I know people don't like to compare and contrast, but that's what you do. You're supposed to do that. And a big shout out to Chris for doing that because not enough people want to talk about it and make it known that the same people who are bitching and moaning about Lindor and myself with Nimmo and not bring Pete Alonso in that conversation when Pete Alonso has been the worst of the three all season, you got to talk about it. And I give a big shout out who just tuned into the chat to Chris. So if you really want to go in depth, which I won't do, I'll just give up situational stats for Pete Alonso. Chris really goes in depth with Pete Alonso, Brendan Nimmo, and Lindor, specifically Pete Alonso, because that was what that was all about. Check his video out when you get a chance. So let's talk about Pete Alonso. We're going to talk about his situational hitting. And with situational hitting, that is no runners on base, counts, favorable counts, non-favorable counts, runners in scoring position, 1 out, runners in scoring position, 2 outs, and bases loaded. We're going to look at that right now. And it looks like this. All right. None on, no outs, 90 at-bats. Not bad. Not terrible, but not good. The average is there. No pressure. 289 average. A lot of strikeouts. 24 strikeouts in that aspect. Now, I'm not going to kill him for the 24 strikeouts with nobody on. When nobody's on, I expect Pete Alonso to try to go for the fences. Depending on the situation and the inning, if you're in the lead or if there's no score or if you're tied, I can expect you to try to swing for the fences. So you might have a little bit more strikeouts. Okay, no problem. 4 RBIs, 4 home runs. So obviously with nobody on, nobody out, the RBIs are hard to come by when there's nobody on, obviously. You're only going to get that 1 RBI if you hit the ball over the wall. So the average is there. Slugging is terrible. Slugging is okay. OPS is pretty good with nobody on, nobody out. Runners in scoring position. Now, this is any scenario where runners in scoring position. 1 out, 2 out, et cetera, right? 20 hits, 8 extra base hits, 5 doubles, 3 home runs, 31 RBIs. So it's been good. But I went a little bit further. It's not on the screen, but I went a little bit further. And Chris talked about this a little bit as well. It doesn't look bad with the 31 RBIs and 94 at-bats with runners in scoring position. By the way, he has over 340 at-bats as well, right? A lot of walks, pretty good walks. A lot of strikeouts as well. But a 213 average with runners in scoring position. What does that tell me? That tells me that runners in scoring position, average-wise, not good at all. 5 double plays. That's a lot. Sack flies, 2. A big problem, in my opinion. All right. We're going to look at here with the 31 RBIs. And I highlighted this on purpose. Right? The 31 RBIs seems like a lot, right? Seems like a lot. But you're 3.5 months into your season. That's an issue because I looked at it in depth. In April, he had near 20 RBIs in April. 15 RBIs. So half of his RBIs were in April in this grand total of runners in scoring position. Really good in the first month. May, not much. June, not much. He basically in June and July got another 15 to 16 RBIs to add to that other 15 in April. That's how bad it was. So that stat, just looking at it, looks good. But when you really go into depth and break it down by month, it's absolutely terrible. Average, 213. Big problem. Runners in scoring position with 2 outs. 13 RBIs. Not great, but not bad with 39 at-bats. 2 home runs, okay. But that's a home run every what? 14, 15 at-bats? Not going to cut it. 231 average. 728 OPS. Slugging 410. Not good. Bases loaded. 9 at-bats. Not a big sample size. No home runs. 4 RBIs and 9 at-bats. Overall, not terrible, but not good. A 111 average with the bases loaded. Now, this is any scenario with the bases loaded. No outs, 1 out, 2 outs. This is an interesting stat. Behind an account after 0-1. 181 at-bats, a ton of at-bats. 50 strikeouts, 243 average. Average, not terrible. 25 RBIs, 13 home runs. So he's hit better when he was behind an account. Now look at ahead an account. 13 RBIs with 1 home run. 219 average. That makes no sense. You should be better than that in that spot. Better. That is the issue with Pete Alonso. And I'm sorry if I didn't look at the comments while I was talking about his stats. Steven, I don't want to hear about getting his swing back in the second half, right? It's past the second half. If you really look at it, you played 98 games already. You got less than half for your second half. You got about 60-something games left. 64 to be exact. It's not a lot of games here. This is a big sample size. This is not 50 games into the season, 60 games into the season, even 75 games into the season. This is almost 100 games into the season. This is almost 2/3 of your season. And it has not changed. And there's no signs of him breaking out of it. Now, I hope he does. But there isn't signs of him walking more. There isn't signs of him taking better at-bats. Because when Nimmo and Lindor specifically were in those terrible slumps in April and May, when they started to produce, they started with working the count, taking walks, putting better at-bats together without getting the hits. Pete Alonso is still striking out at a tremendous rate, not walking basically at all. His hard hit rate in 2024 is down 3 points overall over the last 2 seasons. His hard hit rate was over 90 in 2022. Last year was around the 88, 89. This year it's around 87. It's a huge problem. So he's not even hitting hard contact as much this year as he did in the last couple of seasons. And that's an issue as well. Pete Alonso's situational hitting is absolutely atrocious. Atrocious. It's that bad. It can't look. I will take less of an average if he's hitting home runs every 8 to 12 at bats, because that will lead you to around 40 to 45 home runs. You can't hit a home run every 30 at bats, which is what he's been doing over this month. a problem. When Nimmo and Lindor have a couple home runs less than you, and you're supposed to be this tremendous power hitter, and you have 19, and you were on 18 for a long time, it's a problem. Pete Alonso, even when he was doing badly in 2023 and struggling in 2022, he was still hitting home runs at a good rate. Now, with the lack of average, the high strikeouts, the low walks, he's not hitting the home runs at the rate you expect Pete Alonso to hit home runs. In 3.5 months, he has 19 home runs. Now, he could still finish with 35 home runs, maybe close to 40. But where was these home runs? Right? If he gets to 40 to 45 home runs, that means he hit around 20 plus home runs in the last 2.5 months of the season, which will be very good. But what have I seen that gives me confidence in the last 64 games of the season to tell me Pete Alonso is going to turn his power around at the very least? I'm not even talking about average and clutch hitting. I'm talking about just power. Give me just power, and I will take it from Pete Alonso. Even if his average is not good. Even if situational hitting got a little bit better, but his power comes back. Because we never seen Pete Alonso, while struggling, not hit home runs at a substantial rate or a Pete Alonso type rate. Even when he's struggling mightily and he can't put the bat on the ball consistently. But his home runs were always there. You can always count on Pete Alonso to hit a ball over the wall that was a mistake, even while struggling. He's not doing that right now. That is a huge problem for this New York Mets team. It's a huge problem for the lack of criticism, the media, and a lot of the Mets fans who are starting to come around now. And more people are talking about his lack of clutch hitting, his situational awareness, situational hitting, his lack of contact with runners on base, his high strikeout rate, which isn't too much of a concern for a power hitter, but when your average is down and your situational hitting is bad, it's glaring. And when your walks are down, that is where Pete Alonso is extremely worrisome if you're a fan of the New York Mets. And it should be worrisome for Mendoza. The media needs to grow a pair and stop kissing Pete Alonso's ass. It's getting to the point where it's very annoying and where content creators on YouTube have to make more of an issue about it than the media who gets paid to talk about this team, who it's their job to bring that up because they had no problem doing it to Francisco Lindor earlier in the season. They had no problem killing Brandon Nimmo when he was struggling in the 3-hole. Where's the criticism from Pete Alonso from all these reporters? It took content creators on YouTube, and many of us have done so, which I give a tremendous amount of credit for, because we don't get paid by the Mets. This is not our job to criticize and talk and bring up the news, good or bad, about the New York Mets. We do this because we love to do it. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. And I know there's a lot of content creators, Mets content creators, that are huge Pete Alonso fans. And it's probably very tough for them to talk about this and criticize and bring up those stats and talk about how bad Pete Alonso has been in 2024 in situational hitting, in clutch hitting, overall. It's not easy for them. And I respect the hell out of them because they actually took time to realize and to bring it up, because they did not have to, about Pete Alonso, no matter how much you love the guy. And I appreciate the hell out of that. And every one of them should get lauded for that. And I'll do that right now on my channel for them because they deserve it. Pete Alonso, 64 games left. Step the fuck up. That's it. That might be harsh. People might not like that. But I haven't seen it from Pete Alonso enough. It's not like I have postseason numbers to look at. A lot of them. Not all his fault. It's a team game. But there's been too many times. I'm telling you guys, when Pete Alonso comes up with runners on base and you're not confident in one of your best players on your team, that's concerning. He's a ground ball, double play waiting to happen. Can't even get, a guy on second, less than 2 outs. At the very least, hit the ball to the right side, get the runner over to third. That's not even happening. He's popping up, grounding to the left side. Not good enough. It's not good enough. And it's frustrating as hell. And we need to talk about it. And we finally are talking about it. So shout out to these content creators who are bringing it up, who are making it known, because the media won't. The baseball reporters, the Mets reporters are not. And I appreciate the fact that they are. All right, guys, let's get to the next problem that involves the team itself. Runners in scoring position in this Marlins series starting the second half. 2 for 22 were runners in scoring position. That's an 0.91 average. That's bad. Especially with a team that was scoring 6.5 runs per ball game in their 6-7 week stretch prior to the All-Star break. Like, I can understand a little dip, but this is a problem. It's a huge problem for this whole team. Now, I do believe that they can get to league or just above league average around 4.5 runs per game, where if you score 4.5 runs per game to 5 runs per game, you're giving yourself a tremendous amount of chance to win. They got to get there. Right now, they're scoring just under 3 runs per game. Now, it's a very small sample size. It's only 3 games in the second half. So I'm not going to go crazy, but it's concerning because of the team we're losing against and the way this offense was performing. And that goes a lot to a Pete Alonso and a JD Martinez, who's in the middle of your lineup. Because you can't expect the bottom of the order to always pick you guys up and save your asses. That's not how this works. It's nice for a little while, but it's for the big guys to do the job the majority of the time. So, unfortunately, the Mets got to be better offensively. The pitching hasn't been bad. Hasn't been great. It's been, I would say about average right now. Severino was very good. Sean Manaea struggled. Christian Scott struggled. But the Sean Manaea game, well, not really. Yesterday's game, the Mets had opportunities. They didn't get the job done. Even in the first game with Sean Manaea, they had opportunities. They just didn't score. Hence, the 2 for 22 were runners in scoring position. It's a huge problem. They got to fix that. They got to change it quick. The offense needs to be better. The pitching has kept them in games. Even though Manaea wasn't good, even though Christian Scott didn't go deeper into the ball game or didn't give, he gave up 3 runs, not terrible, but it kind of put the Marlins ahead, and it was a tough go over with a team that had a hard time scoring. The offense had opportunities. It's not like they weren't getting hits and they weren't getting opportunities and they didn't have runners on base. When you're 2 for 22, you have a tremendous amount on base per game. If you do the math, it's around 7 guys in scoring position if you average it out between the 3 games. Now, obviously, that number's a little skewed because there's more in this game than in another game. But if you average it out, it's around 7 runners in scoring position per game that are not coming in. So they had opportunities in every one of these games to score more runs. Not saying they would have won the games, but they would have had more chances to score. They had an opportunity to score runs. That sucks. All right, I'm just looking at the comments really quick. Consuelo, what do I think about Vientos? He's been fine, right? I'm not expecting him to be, hot all year round. He's going to be going through his struggles. It was a dangerous what happened to him with the ball that hit him in the head. Freaking dangerous. But I think Vientos is going to be completely fine. All right. Yeah, well, Duran, they have been doing that with Goldschmidt because he's not the same player anymore. Now, I'm not saying to move Pete Alonso to 7th. Okay, that's a little drastic. But why not put Vientos in the cleanup? Why not move Pete Alonso to 5 or 6? They had no problem doing it to Lindor and Nimmo. I know it's still at the top of the order, but moving around 1st, 2nd, 3rd, you can move Pete Alonso around. That would be nice. Exactly, Ricardo. Vientos is least of the problems, but I understand what Consuelo was talking about, what others are talking. We're not really worried about them right now. So let's get up to today's game that's going to lead up to the Yankees game over the next 2 days. The Mets are trying to salvage this 4-game series and split, which is not great, but it's manageable. I always look at these 2-game series against the Yankees as a split. I always go into it thinking it's going to be a split. So if the Mets win today and they split against the Yankees, it's a 3-3 road trip. Again, what do I continue to say about road trips? You want to go 500 at least. 500 on the road, regardless of who you play, is satisfactory when you're in a wild card spot, when you're a couple of games over 500, because it maintains somewhere above where you were to start the road trip, right? The Mets starting the road trip, right? What were they? 3 games over 500. If they end up in these 6 games on the road splitting, they would be back to 3 games over 500. So you're not really losing ground in your win-loss total. Now, depending on what happens with the wild card and the other teams, you might lose a wild card spot at that moment, but you're still keeping that 3 games over 500 record. And why I say you got to play better at home. You got to play above 500 baseball at home, like the Mets have been doing over this last month and week, about 7-8 weeks. So I don't care who you play on the road. Be 500 at the very least coming back home, because you're guaranteed to be where you are record-wise coming back home. And if you do that, the Braves haven't really been killing it, right? I want to get to the Braves series at home at least 4 games back of the Braves, because that gives me and the Mets an opportunity, and all you guys an opportunity to go into that series really picking up games and picking up ground on the Atlanta Braves. And the reason why I say that and why I keep on telling you how important that Atlanta series is because every game of that series, of that 4-game series at home against the Braves, is like 2 games in the standings, because you're facing off head-to-head. You gain a game in the win column, you gain a game in the loss column. It's a lot easier to gain ground quickly when you face that team a lot over the next 2 months, 2.5 months. And we do. We face the Braves, 10 more times? That's a lot. So the Mets have an opportunity here, and they need to be within 4 games of the Braves going into that series at home against them. With Albies going on the IL, with Fried going on the IL. They're hurting right now. Great time to get them. You can't squander that. And the Mets got to start today against the Marlins. Salvage this 4-game set. Go 2-2. Go to the Bronx. At the very least, split. You don't want to get swept 2 games against the Yankees. You want to get a split. I'm fine with a split. Not happy about a split if we get it with the Marlins. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it doesn't hurt you as much as you might think. Go into the Yankee series split, you're 3-3 on the road, 500 on the road, not an issue. You come home, you got the Braves, you probably be, if you split the homestand on the road trip, 3-3, you're going into the Braves series probably around where you are games back of the Atlanta Braves. And you get Senga back. So that's the goal going forward. Carlos, I did not listen to the Rico Brony podcast. Yeah, Carlos, I understand about that 10 out of 19. And, Evan Roberts is a big supporter of Pete Alonso. He grew a beard too many months for him to sign an extension with the Mets, right? You look at those, again, a lot of those 10 home runs, go back to April. I guarantee you most of them were during that April month. And probably in May as well, when the Mets were bad. I guarantee that. Right? But it's not even just about the home runs. It's about the situational hitting. And all the stats say they're not good. Every other stat. But go back to April. If I'm not mistaken, I think Pete Alonso hit 8 to 9 home runs in April. I guarantee you most of them were probably, and again, I'm not killing Pete Alonso for in April. He was the one that actually played well in April. But you can't be an okay player for the next remaining 2.5 months of the season, or the last 2.5 months of the season you played, and you've been mediocre and average. You can't have Pete Alonso be average. It's just not going to work. Yeah, exactly, Carlos. Right? All right, so let's get to the last 2 topics. Obviously, the Yankees are coming up Tuesday and Wednesday, tomorrow and Wednesday. I think, let me just double check. I don't want to be wrong here, because I didn't like how the Mets kind of set up their rotation coming out of the All-Star break. So we got Peterson today. We got Quintana tomorrow. I know that. And we got okay, Sean Manaea on Wednesday against Garrett Cole. So you're going to see Luis Gil and Garrett Cole once again, like we did at Citi Field. Quintana and Manaea, they're keeping the lefties against the Yankees because they've struggled against lefties all year. And again, nothing's changed since the last time we played the Yankees at Citi Field. That was when they were playing very well, or still playing somewhat decent, pretty well actually. Right? It's the same concept. Don't let Judge beat you. Don't let Soto, and definitely don't let Judge beat you. If you have to, pitch around or walk Aaron Judge. Let Gleyber Torres, let Anthony Volpe, let DJ LeMahieu beat you. If you let them beat you, you tip your cap and call it a day. But do not let Juan Soto and definitely Aaron Judge beat you. The Yankees are very beatable. Their lineup is very subpar after Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Let the other guys beat you. If the other guys beat you, the Verdugos, the Volpes, the LeMahieu's, the Torres, the Wells, Ben Rice. If those guys beat you, you tip your cap and says, you got the best of us. I'd rather let them beat us because there's a better shot of them making outs than Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Now, I'm not talking about Aaron Judge with nobody on base. Death when you go after him. Juan Soto, right? It's tough to try to work around him because you got Aaron Judge behind him. So you try your best to get Soto out. But if there's a spot where you can work around Juan Soto, you do it. But most importantly, don't let Aaron Judge beat you. Aaron Judge did damage against the Mets when the Mets did not have to pitch to him in both games. You can't do it again. If the situation calls for it and you have to go after him, 2 outs or whatever the situation is, but it's a close game and there's nowhere to put him. It's a tie game or, bases loaded, 2 outs, tie game, or you got a 1-run lead. Don't let him beat you. But you have to go after him in that spot because you're not going to get the tie and run in or the go-ahead run in. You got to go after him. But in any other situation, pitch around him. Don't let him beat you. I'd rather lose going after the bad hitters in the lineup or the hitters that are not named Aaron Judge. Let Torres beat you. Let LeMahieu hit you, beat you. Rice, Torres, Volpe, Wells. Let those guys beat you. If they beat you, what are you going to do? It's just one of those games. It's just those games. It's just a game that the other guys came through. But I'm not going to let Juan Soto and Aaron Judge beat me because that just shows you the lack of planning and the lack of situational awareness that the Mets pitchers, catcher, and management had in going into those games. So that's where we are with the Yankee series after today. The deadline. We all know what we need. Bullpen help. It's not a secret. Every team the Mets are going to try to trade with know they need bullpen help, along with many other contending teams for a playoff spot. We know bullpen arms are at a premium. Bullpen arms are at the top of the ticket at this deadline. It's not starting pitching, even though starting pitching is probably a close number 2. And bats are probably number 3 if you had to rank them. So it's going to be very hard to even get those B-level bullpen arms because that's going to cost you. Hunter Harvey got a number 2 overall prospect from the Royals to land a pretty good, I would call him a B-plus reliever. So any A relievers you might be looking at, Tanner Scott, Carlos Estevez, right? We can go on and on about top tier, top A-level relievers are going to cost you. Are the Mets going to go there? Yet to be determined. I will. I'm willing to. I know some people are not. The prospect huggers are probably having a heart attack right now. B-level relievers are going to cost you probably a top 6, probably a top at least one top prospect. Maybe the B- guys are going to keep you in the high top 10 prospect. C-level. If you're not willing to give anybody in the top 10, you're probably going to end up getting to the low B- to C level bullpen arms. And those, you might be lucky and find a team that wants to shed salary. You might give them a lower level minor leaguer that's not in the top 15 and pay the rest of the salary. You might get lucky there. But it's not one of the better ones. So what is David Stearns going to do? Let's say the Mets are 2 or 3 games over 500, right in a wild card spot or right under a wild card spot, a half game out of a wild card spot. Say around where they are right now, 5 days from now. Because there's a lot of talk that trade rumors are going to start picking up this week. And we got to watch out closely for that. So it's probably a real possibility that can happen. Some things might happen or some rumors you're going to start hearing. Maybe we'll get a better idea where the Mets are looking. If we start hearing rumors the Mets are on these A levels, well, expect to lose a top prospect or 2 in your top 10. Just an FYI for everybody who is scared shitless of getting rid of prospects. So here we go. In my opinion, the New York Mets need to go after one A-level reliever. Tanner Scott, Carlos Estevez. Those two guys to be exact. Right? Maybe you can go get an AJ Puck from Miami. Right? I want these people, I tell you. All right, guys. Sorry about that comment. So I would go after a Tanner Scott or a Carlos Estevez. I would try to get them. Now, you might not be able to get them. You know, I already says I will dangle Jet Williams out there for the best reliever out there. And I know the prospect huggers are having heart palpitations right now. But hear me out on this. If Vientos is proven to you guys that he might be the third baseman of the future, shortstop is obviously Lindor. Second base, we're all going to be assuming if it's not going to be McNeil, it's going to be Luisano Acuna. Jet Williams is not playing first base, regardless if Pete Alonso is here next year or not. So Jet Williams, as your number one overall prospect, is expendable. With that said, Brett Baty is probably expendable. How much value does Brett Baty have? I don't know. Maybe the Marlins still really like him. Maybe they will be willing to give up Tanner Scott for a Brett Baty. Maybe they will. Maybe they're stupid enough to do it. I do that right now. I will pick up Brett Baty. I'll drop him off. I would do it. But I don't know if David Stern's willing to. Remember, these are not his guys. He did not draft these guys. He did not trade for these guys. So we don't know who he likes. Yes, he wants a farm system. He wants a farm system he can pick out and plug in guys whenever there's injuries or concerns with other players on the roster. But that's why he'll draft. I think David Stearns prioritizes pitching prospects a hell of a lot more than position player prospects. Why? Because it's less of a risk to sign position players in free agency than pitching in free agency. Pitching in free agency is a huge risk. Position player free agency is less of a risk. There's more of a chance of that position player being better and having a better overall contract and stats over that contract better than a pitcher in free agency who's probably 30 or older, who you got to give a tremendous amount of money to, and is more prone to injury and less success, as the Mets have seen already. So, in my opinion, the way David Stern drafted in 2024 and drafted a ton of college pitchers tells me he's prioritizing pitching prospects over position player prospects. I'm not saying to get rid of all your position player prospects, but we're also forgetting about Ronnie Mauricio. Where's he going? He's probably going to be on this Major League club next year. So that even makes Jet Williams very expendable if you need to get a top-level reliever. Someone's closer. Someone's big eighth inning guy. I'd be willing to do that. I don't know if some are. If you're not, you're crazy. Because Jet Williams does not have a spot in his team. People can tell me all you want. Oh, we can put him in the outfield. Well, okay, what about Drew Gilbert? Right? What about Ryan Clifford, who probably could be a first baseman? But you got outfielders. You got guys that are available. That's in your farm system. The fact of the matter is, what is David Stearns willing to do? This week, where a lot of reporters believe you're going to hear a lot of trade rumors popping up, We'll see what type of pitchers the Mets are going to be focusing on this week if the hot stove starts picking up a little bit. We'll see. So, guys, with that said, appreciate you guys tuning in to an afternoon edition of Mets Talk Live. Mets play at 6:40 tonight with David Peterson on the mound against Yanni Chirinos. Mets are looking to salvage a 4-game series and split it heading into the Bronx for 2 against the New York Yankees. With that said, everybody have a great day. Enjoy the Mets game tonight. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do a pregame, but look out for a pregame if I do it around 5:30. With that said, everybody have a great day. Enjoy the game. Thank you for tuning in to another Mets Talk Live. Let's go, Mets. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel, guys. I will see you, hopefully, for Mets pregame today at 5:30. Have a great day. Enjoy your Monday. Don't work too hard. Let's go, Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets.